Hello friends, it's Mr. E here, and today we're talking about the exclusive weapons for the Skitarii class. I'll be touching on all of the melee weapons in this video so that it isn't overlong, but we're going to go over the melee weapons. We're going to look at their different blessings, and I'm going to kind of go over what I think might end up being the best setup for these in a build that focuses around these weapons or a build that's using these weapons as an off pick. Now, from what I've seen, they're all relatively competent and capable, but some do, to me, seem like they're going to stand out a little bit more. And I also want to draw attention to a few non-exclusive weapons that are also going to be potentially really, really good in this class. And of course, once the class releases, I'll do like a mini tier list within the class once I play with all the weapons, just to get a feel on what might be just sort of the winners here. But I got some ideas based on what I've seen in the gameplay and the talents. So starting off here with the Arc Maul today, let's go ahead and play a little bit of demo footage provided to me by one of my many Bothan spies. Many of their lives were sacrificed. So obviously, very high attack speed weapon, pretty similar swing pattern, I would say, to the Arbites Shock Maul. Very similar feel. And what you notice though is that the base damages are not nearly as juiced as the Arbites Shock Maul are. Even though those base damages are there, this weapon doesn't rely so much on building up damage through Relentless or any of those blessings, but instead relies on this mechanic, which is the Arc mechanic. So we're going to play this back so you can see exactly what's going on here, but more or less we activate the arc. I want you to notice right here when it's activated, there's this little meter on the screen. You can't barely see it, but this will flash and show you how much juice is left when you hit. So see here on the first hit, it flashes right here. It's hard to see on the thing, but second hit, there you can see it going down right there. There's little pips going down. Hopefully that is gets made more visible, or maybe it's just the compression of this video. I don't know, but it doesn't seem all that visible to me. It's also on the weapon as well, as I understand. But look at this. So check this out. This is really, really cool. The way this arc thing functions is we hit once. Okay, now this enemy is primed. The second hit is going to arc them. The third hit will jump from them into the nearest target and arc to them. So this is our first arc, and there we get another arc, and look at that. If you crit the primary target, you also crit any secondary and beyond targets, which is super, super cool. It means that there is a massive incentive to synergize crit with arc weapons. So arc rifle and the Arc Maul here are going to both make massive use of that. So that's really awesome. And yeah, we like to see that. Nice big flashy displays and puffs of smoke, and not a inconsequential amount of damage either, right? Those are just light attacks, by the way. Light attacks that are doing this level of damage when it's empowered. So yeah, nice big bops and dropping the guy down, very solid. The weapon overall seems to really rely on the damage from those empowered strikes. As they said, the way you build up the damage, or the way you build up the charge, is by meleeing enemies, so you'll build more charge as you're just bonking enemies around. Fortunately, it does have a ton of stagger potential, so it'll keep you nice and safe while you're in combat. I think that probably the mechanic that will be most at play in terms of making this weapon functional and deciding a good player from a bad player with it is going to be finding a target that can withstand some of those electrified bonks in order to spread the arc, right? So one of the things that I've noticed in some more we're just bonking around here, but in actual gameplay is that, of course, this weapon doesn't need to hit the targets behind the primary target in order to deal damage to them, right? So if you've got a pack of Ragers or something that's chasing you around and you can really only hit the lead target without endangering yourself, you can just hit on that lead target, and it subsequent hits will then arc to the guys behind. So you can start to clear hordes even without kind of putting yourself at range, and you can just kind of work on the guy that's closest. So if you got a Crusher or something leading the way, you just bonk on him, and then you'll kill the shotgunners and maulers and whatever that are behind following him around, which is pretty cool. So I think there's going to be a level of skill in picking a target that you can bonk multiple times without kind of killing them. Because if you do kill them, then you have to reset, more or less. You have to find another target that you can then build your arcs off of and get that damage done. So really cool weapon. I'm very, very excited to play with this, but let's go ahead and look at the weapon itself. Here it is. You can check it out on Games Lantern. They don't have the picture in there, but it is what it is. Now, as far as our stats here, I think there's one obvious one that we'll probably want to have be at the bottom here, which is mobility. So mobility doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter, right? It's always going to be good enough to get our maximum dodges of 4, and it will be good enough to give us a decent dodge distance as well. We're not really losing anything here. And then we have the other ones, which are, of course, going to be our cleave damage and our stagger, our damage versus targets, as well as the jump distance and the jump angle of the arc. We also get more damage versus flak and carapace and just flat damage from damage. One thing I want to notice here is that on this penetration stat, we can start to see what the base stats are as far as armor penetration on the carapace and flak. We're looking at, like, on the heavies up here, we're doing 84%, right? That's 84% damage conversion into heavy armor, into carapace armor, which is really, really good. So it makes sense. A lot of mace weapons are in that ballpark. So we can't select perks here, but they'd be the same perks as all the other weapons have. However, we can check out blessings. So let's start with the blessings here. We have all or nothing, up to 40% strength as stamina depletes. You know, this is a pretty interesting blessing, right? They also very glad, by the way, they fixed this node to read correctly. It used to read up to 8% strength, but it gives you up to 5 stacks of 8% as you lose 20% of your stamina. So yeah, looking at the talent tree down here, we do have nodes like Channel Motive Force, where if we spend stamina, we can get extra damage. We do have nodes like a Voltaic Burst, where staggering enemies with a push applies electrocution, so you could have some incentive to push enemies a lot and get the push stab and therefore have low stamina. Although I don't necessarily think that is probably all that wise in general. Another really solid, and this is always a solid blessing on pretty much every weapon it appears on, is Confident Strike. 7% toughness on chained hit, meaning just continue hitting, don't miss an attack, but as long as you hit anything on that next hit, what it will do is it'll give you 7% toughness. And that is a lot of toughness, because that is on top of everything else you get. So if you kill an enemy on that attack, you get 5%. If you kill an enemy with a weak spot, and you have this talent here, you'd get 5, and then another 5, and then 7. If you get a crit, you would then get 7.5% of it, right? So it just adds a ton into the pool, and because it's just on any hit, it's very easy to casually regenerate a ton of your toughness with this. And that, I think, combined with like something like Power Overflow here, where when you're at full toughness, you're going to distribute 7 or 25% of that 7 to everybody around you, which is almost 2% to everybody around you in every single hit. That's going to be great for keeping people topped off. Like, your team will love you for having something like that. And I think this is going to be a solid pick if you're using this as a secondary weapon that is not sort of your primary, right? If you're going into like deal damage with this thing, if that's your intent, I think you're going to be much better off doing like execution here, or maybe enhanced Voltaic Arcs, as we'll talk about. But for defense, for just like having this weapon like in the backpack, if you're going primary range or something, this could be very, very good. Then we get enhanced Voltaic Arcs down here, additional jumps, additional jump distance, and jump angle, meaning it can go off like left and right harder rather than just like directly behind it, which is cool. We get execution, which is damage bonus versus staggered. I think this is going to be an automatic pick if this is going to be your primary. This weapon does not have Skull Crusher, so you can't get that juicy Skull Crusher bonus, but you know, that's a really juicy bonus on its own, and it's very easy to stagger because we have a high impact. We can go even higher impact with Hammer Blow. I don't necessarily know if this is going to reach any thresholds. You know, you saw there, even with light attacks, we're able to knock down maulers and stuff. So this weapon does have very high base impact already. Probably not necessary to go for Hammer Blow. Lightning Reflexes, I think this is such a cool blessing, but it's just kind of weird to try and perfect block with a weapon like this, or with really any weapon in the current meta of Dark Tide. So probably better to try and avoid that, even though it does stun the attacker. Then we have Overwhelming Force, another weird one. Staggering an elite or specialist enemy has a 25% chance to stun them. But here's a definite winner here, Thunderous, which is good enough, right? We didn't get Skull Crusher, but we got Thunderous. Hitting an enemy gives them 4 stacks of 2.5% brittleness, and that can stack up to 16, which means 40% brittleness. And this is the exact same thing as this System Shock, because when you hit an enemy with this weapon, it does electrocute them. That's just the passive of the Arc Maul here. So it's going to be the exact same thing. Now, this could let you stack it twice as fast, meaning you will only have to hit them 2 times to be at a maximum of 40% brittleness, or you can choose just to take this talent or just to take this blessing if you want to save the blessing or the talent respectively. And what that will mean is that on builds where you're not using this as your primary weapon, or maybe even on builds where you are, this is going to be a great 1-2 punch. This is a setup because brittleness applies to everybody. If you brittle up a boss or a crusher or whatever, and then you swap to your ranged, or you call in your allies to attack on it, they will take more damage from all sources for the next 5 seconds. So I was using this, I put together a build where I use Confident Strike, and I put Thunderous on there because this is going to be my melee weapon while I'm in a primary range build, and I'll be able to defend myself in melee against like hordes and stuff. But then also if I get a boss, I can knock them around with Thunderous, get the brittleness up, and then go ham on them with crazy damage. Then finally, we got Voltageist Overload down here. 12.5% chance to insta-kill human-sized enemies hit by arc lightning. So note that potential other triggers will not be activated on an insta-kill. So kind of a two-sided, double-sided blade here, right? 12.5% chance, a 1 in 8 to insta-kill any human-sized, meaning not crushers, not reapers, not bulwarks that are hit by the chain lightning, not by the initial hit, I don't think, but it does say arc, and the first enemy does also get hit by additional arc, so potentially it can insta-kill the first one. But that is a pretty decently high chance. You get at least a good number of rolls of those out of a typical battery discharge, and it's all human-sized, so that's quite a few enemies. Like Ragers and Maulers are dropping to that. All elites in general, except for the Ogren ones, and our lovely specialists as well. But it doesn't activate other triggers. So when it says that, it's like, okay, you won't get the benefit of where's our elite kill ones? I know there's one somewhere here. Oh, you won't get the benefits of like this, right? Elite and specialist kills restore stacks and restore toughness. Nope, that doesn't count, because when this takes the kill, this is a range elite kill thing. But yeah, when this takes the kill, you don't get the kill credit. So for instance, where's our kills? Weak spot kills restore 5% toughness, or elite kills restore 15% toughness, right? If this just drops them, pretend like they just got someone like press the delete key and erase them from the game. Nobody gets kill credit. The blessing steals it from you. So that does kind of suck, but it could clean up a lot of enemies very easily, especially if you can quickly generate that arc charge and then repeatedly use this into hordes. And next up we have the Transonic Blades, in this clip wielded by Jeff Forkus. Reminder, name your Skitarii Fork. But the Transonic Blades, so they are a homage to Corellian's sword and dagger from Vermintide 2. They are super like complicated weapons in terms of their combo. So you have a combo when you are in light mode where your weapons are attuned to unarmored and more lightly armored targets, which is more slashing. And you can even shift the blade's frequency into a heavy attack mode. I don't know if Jeff does it in his footage, but in that more armor penetrating mode with the armor penetrating attunement, your weapon combos become more strike focused. You get more strikes, more lunges, which will be ideal for headshots. And the really cool thing they incorporated here is that there are transitional attacks. So when you're in the middle of your combo, much like if you use the relic blade, where if you activate your blade as you are swinging it around, it'll pause the weapon as it's like over your shoulder and let you come back with it activated. Same thing applies here. It'll pause you mid combo, change your attunement, and the attack you come back with is an attack when you swap from light into heavy. I saw it at some point in Reginald's gameplay. When you swap it from light into heavy penetration, you end up with a more piercing attack, and when you swap the other way, you end up with a nice wide slashing attack. So I think this weapon, when wielded by players that have had a lot of time to get experience with it, much like Corellian's dagger and sword, this is going to be an absolute monster, because we have a weapon with that can get base damage against these two types of armor, that has a lot of very potent attacks, even without any real focus around the build. I'm seeing headshots on crushers that are doing 1,000 damage with heavy stabs, which is a lot, right? That is a lot without any additional investment or even rending or whatever. So yeah, this weapon is potentially going to be very competitive in that way. And I think it's going to be I think that's going to be the master's choice if I had to make a guess. So let's go ahead and check out what this weapon can do as far as its talents down here, the paired transonic blades. Now we've got our choices here, right? What are we going to drop? And I think that the chances choice is obvious here, right? It's going to be the cleave efficiency to be our minimal stats. Damage, finesse, critical bonus, and penetration are all going to be maxed. Penetration is just too good for Flak and Carapace. Finesse is critical, weak spot, and attack speed. You can't drop that. Critical bonus is going to give us not only critical damage, about a 17% boost to critical damage, but also a melee critical chance boost of 6%. Juicy. And then damage itself is just damage, of course. This weapon is going to be very, very incentivized to do crit, right? As you can see here, we're getting like a big finesse bonus. So what are the blessings on this weapon? We actually get Bladed Momentum. So Bladed Momentum is a weapon, or a blessing that's only really appeared on a couple other weapons at this point. I think it's on Heavy Sword. I don't know what else, but it can give you up to 28% rending if you're hitting multiple enemies in one sweep. Not bad, but not all that great. 28% rending, nothing really to write home about. However, deadly frequencies. After hitting an enemy with your weapon special attack, your next melee attack will have 30% increased power. So, as I said, there are two transitional attacks that swap from light penetration into heavy penetration and vice versa, and that is a powerful attack already in its own right, and it makes your next melee attack have even more increased power. So, I'm foreseeing if someone is very skilled with this weapon, this could be insane, because 30% additional power on that next attack, if you transition from non-penetration to penetration, you're already getting that penetration special, and then your next one is going to be a penetrating attack as well with 30% increased power. That's going to be a big shot. That's going to be a big hit. And you could also just swap back and forth with those combo attacks each time and do like big 30% boosted sweep attack, big 30% boosted piercing attack. Pretty cool. Perfect strike down here, a nice one for ignoring hit mass. This weapon does not have very good innate cleave, so this will just cleave through things like they aren't even there if you're critting, which is awesome because this weapon does have a pretty good crit, and it gives you melee crit damage, which is nice. Precog, 2 seconds of 45% finesse. Probably also a very solid choice given the amount of crit we got. Rampage, generally one I never really advise to do because it's only 3.5 seconds of bonus, and you have to hit 3 enemies, which oftentimes is not available. Riposte, a nerfed version of Riposte as compared to the default Riposte in the game, which is 6 seconds long and gives 20% crit. This is only 16% crit and gives only a 4-second buff, but that's still, that's still a nice buff. 16% crit is not that bad. Savage Sweep, hitting 3 enemies with an attack gives you 150% cleave. I don't necessarily know if that is all that worth it. If you can already hit 3 enemies, you're probably good. And then Shred, which is up to 20% crit bonus when you're stacking. You have to hit chain hits, so if you miss an attack, you reset your stacks, which does suck. I tend to think that Riposte is probably going to be better for this, also because you don't have to actively be attacking. You can dodge the first attack in a combat, or you can even dodge a range attack and get this activated, and then go into the combat with 16%, rather than stacking up over time. And Superiority, always a very strong choice on weapons that it appears on. It's a little bit nerfed here as opposed to how it appears on like the Psyker's Force Blaze Sword, but 10% melee strength for 5 seconds, stacking 3 times, deteriorating 1 at a time. So, we're going to get up to 30% melee strength, which is a lot on a weapon like this. A lot of ways you could build this depending on how you intend to use your weapon. I tend to think that like combo sort of builds that can use the weapon swapping very frequently with deadly frequencies here, and staying on the aggressive for superiority could be insane, but you could also go for like a precog rampage, or precog riposte sort of combo here with finesse and crit for the classic crit build. Of course, there is a ton of synergies with this build, or with this weapon down here, last stand, all that sort of stuff. We also have additional melee cleave and things like that up here, and because this weapon is so good at crits, you might want to take Electro Strike Conduit here, which will guarantee an electrocution on the first target hit, and then reminder, you can add in System Shock, which can then give brittleness, and that'll also get Retribution Conduit, so your follow-up attacks will do more and more and more versus these targets when they're already electrified. So yeah, this weapon has a lot of potential. I think that this is a weapon that people will have to play with a lot to learn. It seems like I've said many times, It's really cool when there are weapons in the game that are powerful, but also they have a large amount of the power locked behind knowing how to use the weapon. And that encourages you to really look out there and see how players are playing with it. And I can't wait to see I can't wait to see skilled Skitarii that know how to use this weapon and be impressed by what they can do in game and challenge myself to do the same. So really exciting to see that. And let's finally wrap up with a little bit of footage of the power sword and talk about the power sword with the class. So here is our power sword as demonstrated by Joe Plays Games once again. And as you can see, the default moveset for the power sword is some sweeps and then a nice little thrust that comes out of the, I don't know how the Skitarii kind of like turns their arm over like that. It's kind of interesting, but these are the light attack combos, nice and piercing. And this weapon, if you were unaware, the way that it functions is that it has a baseline power level that is fairly high, and that is decreased as you use weapon special attacks like this. So you can see that weapon special attack. I don't know if she shows any weapon special heavies, but you can hold the weapon special attack here to do a heavy weapon special with it, or you can simply tap it to do a light. And that will do a nice big attack. As you can see, they're very powerful, but it consumes some of the weapon's raw power. So yeah, you'll have to wait. You can see the bar there slowly filling up. I wish that was a little bit more opaque, but yeah, you can see there, it fills up. Well, it looks like it takes about like 3 seconds, and there's a bit of a delay before it starts recharging too. Yeah, it looks like it delays for about 3 seconds before it starts recharging, and then it builds up a couple, like 2 seconds per charge. But yeah, looking at like 880 damage, 1100 damage on a crit with the empowered attack, and that's just an empowered light. So pretty potent little pokey stick there. Let's see if she demonstrates any heavies with the. Does she know about charge heavy? Ooh, I like that animation, like holding it under your arm and do that. Still, I mean, even without like charging up the blade, very, very good. So yeah, she doesn't do the charged heavy, but that's okay. We'll demonstrate it in due time. But yeah, this weapon having the option to either drop charges in order to get a immediate boost of power and armor penetration, or to have it be more powered at a baseline is a nice little alternative to play with there. And I think it's going to have some very obvious synergies with builds that maybe you don't stay on your sword all the time, right? You can let the sword recharge while it's in the backpack and be doing your own thing with your range weapon or with your cord claw strike, and then pull out the sword and pop off a couple of quick attacks, use that charge up, and then go back to doing your other stuff. So yeah, not staying on the sword full time lets you recharge it while it's equipped or while it's away rather. Okay, so here's our Mechanicus sword. I think we have an obvious choice here, which is the mobility needs to be the lowest stat here. Then damage, power output, first target, and finesse all the way up. Power output here is also just going to increase the power damage of that strike. And there, I think you can see the actual damages of the light versus the heavy powered attack. So 313 or 423. So our heavy power attack is going to do like about 30% more damage with that. Then for our blessings, so some really interesting blessings here. I'm very excited to see what this can be built up to, but we got Bloodthirsty, 40% critical strike chance on your next melee attack after a special attack kill. So of course, the next melee attack could be an empowered strike as well. So much like you have with the Zealous Eviscerator, where you have the 100% critical strike chance on the next attack after a weapon special for the Eviscerator, which guarantees your next Eviscerator chain rip to be a critical. This could also give that for us. It's a 40% chance, but that's still very high considering the general crit propensity the class has. And that means that we could go for a headshot, go for a murder with this right out the gate, and then we are going to follow up with another empowered attack with a crit, which is going to do probably like an amazing amount of damage. And combine that with Chain Death Blow here, which is 20% crit chance for 3 seconds on weak spot kill. So we could go for a headshot, get the headshot kill, and then we're going to have 20% crit chance, and then we can stack that with the 40. That's pretty much guaranteed. You also have 24% finesse for 4 seconds at enemy one shot. As you saw, this weapon does a lot of lunges and stabs. Pretty easy to one-shot enemies with that. That definitely seems pretty easy. And stacking up to 120% finesse is not anything to be taken lightly. This is a very, very powerful blessing on lesser weapons. This weapon looks like this might be one of the best blessings on it. Devastating Strike, probably not all that crazy. 80% cleave for 5 seconds on a critical hit. I didn't see a whole lot of moves here that I would like really like sort of pin as, oh, that needs more cleave, because it seems like more of a thrusting weapon. Machine Spirit Resurgent, although very interesting here. Refund a special charge on weapon special weak spot kill can occur only every 3 seconds. So every 3 seconds you can power up and stab a dude in the head. If you get the kill, you get a charge back. So you get to basically do 1 power attack for free if it's the finishing blow, and you get a headshot every 3 seconds. So I could see a synergy here with Bloodthirsty. If you can land that crit, right? If you can get that headshot, you're going to keep your charge and you're going to land the crit. You know, you're going to get a reset on the crit. So you could just constantly be chaining these headshots with a really high crit chance. And yeah, that could be very, very powerful there. Sunder, increased cleave and 10% heavy melee attack on energized attacks. Probably not all that great. You know, the cleave on the energized attacks here doesn't seem all that important. 4 stacks of brittleness on an energized hit. Again, we have ways of getting brittleness already, and we also only have a limited amount of energized hits. I don't think that'll be that important. And superiority, as I said before, potentially a very strong blessing here. Getting 10% melee strength for 5 seconds on a leader special skill, up to 30%. You know, dropping off 1 at a time, of course, pretty good. The ones I'm most interested to play with here are this Machine Spirit Resurgent, Decapitator, and Bloodthirsty. There's something going on here. I'm not certain exactly what it is, but there's something going on here where you're going to be able to pop off these empowered stabs and go boom, 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 and drop them for, you know, thousands of damage with those empowered strikes over and over and over. So in terms of what I'm thinking for a weapon like this, we of course could be going into, you know, sort of melee attack speed and that sort of stuff down here for weak spot damage, of course, stuff like that. But we could also be doing some sort of setup. We could have some sort of setup where we want to electrocute them. We could have a focus on regaining charges. We could just be using this as a sidearm to pull out and drop individual targets. There's lots and lots of stuff that you can do to boost a weapon like this even further. And it also is a very quick kill, right? It's a very, very easy way to quickly drop a target. So it might be good to pull out in a pinch and drop like a Rager or something. So yeah, I think that this weapon is definitely looks very competitive damage-wise. So I'm excited to try it out. And that's all the melee weapons. So I won't hold you guys any longer. We'll take a look at the range weapons in the next video, and then we'll move on from there to take a look at how these abilities and their augments function in the video after that. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you're excited to get Skitarii just like I am. I can't wait, and I'll see you then. Mystery out of here. Bye-bye.